Hello everyone. Today I'm going to discuss the Russian Revolution and its aftermath. In our previous class discussions, we discussed the factors that can lead to a successful revolution. So, the factors included national economic issues, growing alienation of the people, mobilization against injustices, merging popular and elite grievances, the factor of power and class, the ideology of the political philosophers can impact on a revolution, but the most important factor of a revolution is, of course, there needs to be a revolutionary leader who can mobilize the masses with their powerful rhetoric so that the entire country can be behind him, and then it can lead to a successful revolution. Sometimes the international relations is also involved in a successful revolution. The ideology of political philosophers are also very important because the ideologies of the philosophers can motivate the revolutionaries and the revolutionary leader. In the context of the Russian Revolution, several factors were involved. The discontented peasantry, inadequate land reforms, industrial development was taking place, but there was the discontented working class, interclass hostilities, Marxist theory. Educated Russians joined the revolutionary movements, the role of Duma, which was the legislative assembly in Russia, and how it was involved during the crisis period, and its relation with the royal family, the Tsar's family, the Tsar of Russia's family matters. Rasputin was a healer but a very controversial figure. That has also impacted the Russian society during the Russian Revolution. The Tsarina, the Tsar's wife, also interfered in the royal and state matters. Then the Tsar's repressive policy. There was chaos and anarchy. Then there was this rise of nationalism during the First World War. And of course, international politics was also involved in the Russian Revolution. Among the factors of the Russian Revolution, the most important was the grievances of the working class. There was inadequate land reforms that led to the intense discontent among peasants. Industrial development in the urban areas led to the growth of large urban working class, but they were dissatisfied with its working and living condition. Then in the war with Japan, in the Russo-Japanese War, Russia lost, and the economic burden fell on the peasants. So the peasant rebellion broke out in the countryside. Massive strikes throughout Moscow and St. Petersburg took place. Then an advisory elected parliament, the Duma, was created, and land reforms began. But still, it could not resolve the tensions of the working class. So, under the leadership of Vladimir Lenin, the Russian Revolution or the Bolshevik Revolution was successful. As we mentioned, that the political philosophy or the ideology or the writings of the political thinkers or the economists in this case, perhaps their writings have influenced the revolutionaries. In 1848, Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels published the Communist Manifesto, and the Communist Manifesto had a great impact on the revolutionary leader Vladimir Lenin. So, the Communist Manifesto offered a theory of revolution and called for a creation of a communist party. The Communist Party would lead a proletariat revolution against the bourgeois and the capitalist society. And so this was the Marxist theory, the class revolution, and under this, the workers would be benefited. So here we can see the image of Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, who wrote the Communist Manifesto, and that had an impact on the Russian Revolution. Vladimir Lenin, the founder of and the leader of the Russian Bolsheviks, argued that narrow elite who are committed activists should have a link to the masses to overthrow the existing political order by violent means. The leadership was to be centralized and decisions should be collective, a practice described as democratic centralism. So the Communist Manifesto impacted on Vladimir Lenin, and he strategized the values and the ideologies provided in the Communist Manifesto to direct his revolutionary goal. In this image, we can see the Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. They were co-workers, colleagues, and friends. And so this is a beautiful image that shows that how these people they worked together, and they were concerned with the fate or the situation of the working class. As we discussed in our classes, that the main factor of a revolution is when the royal family or the ruling regime, they are aloof from the sufferings of ordinary people. So in the context of the Russian Revolution, the Romanov family ruled for the last 300 years, and the last Romanov family, the Czar Nicholas II and his wife, they were aloof to the grievances of the people. They were more self-centered, and their own interest came first. Their own family interest came first, than the national interest. So this is a picture where the Tsar Nicholas, his wife and children are seen, and their son, he was suffering from hemophilia, and that disease couldn't be cured by any doctor, and so they were very concerned with the heir to the throne, the health issue of the heir to the throne, and that is why they neglected the state affairs. On one hand, people were suffering, there were peasant grievances, and on the other hand, the Tsar's family were totally aloof or totally ignored the suffering of the people. So it looks like in this picture that the Tsar and Tsarina and their son, they went for a skiing trip or on a vacation. This is the image of Gregory Rasputin, a very controversial figure in the Russian society. Gregory Rasputin had a peasant background, but he was known for his drunkenness, stealing, and womanizing. Rasputin became fascinated by a renegade sect within the Russian Orthodox faith that believed that only way to reach God was through sinful actions. Soon he portrayed himself as a monk and continued his sinful activities. In 1903, the infant heir to the throne, Alexis, was diagnosed with hemophilia, and Tsarina Alexandra became desperate to cure her son and lost faith in doctors. At that moment, she found Rasputin to be the sole healer of her sick child. In this picture, we see the Tsar Nicholas's family, and they were executed by Bolshevik revolutionaries in July 1918. So it's the regime, the Tsar's regime. People were very angry with the regime because of their aloofness to the grievances of the people. This is the image of Vladimir Lenin, who founded the Russian Bolshevik organization. And Vladimir Lenin was influenced by Communist Manifesto of Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. The Communist Manifesto informed the basis of modern communist movement. It argued that capitalism would inevitably self-destruct. It will be replaced by socialism and ultimately communism. As we have discussed, that the revolution needs a leader, a revolutionary leader who needs to have a slogan that would reach out to all people. So the popular Bolshevik slogan was peace, land, and bread. Vladimir Lenin was the leader of the Bolshevik Party and the revolutionary leader. He was sent into exile in the early days because the Tsar was very oppressive to the people their who had their own political thoughts, and in this way, the Tsar continued its repressive rules against the political thinkers or the leaders. But during the Bolshevik Revolution, Lenin returned to Russia and took the and made the revolution successful in October 1917. Leo Tolstoy was another Bolshevik leader, and he worked alongside with Vladimir Lenin during the Russian Revolution. This is a very important image, and that really had a strong impact on the Russian Revolution. Initially, I would say that this is the beginning of the revolution. The February Revolution commenced with the Women's March on 23rd February, International Women's Day. It is now the 8th of March, is celebrated as the International Women's Day. Thousands of women protested in Petrograd. They demanded more generous rations, an end to World War I, and the right to vote. Russia entered the World War I in 1914, but later it had to leave the war, and because there was the massive changes and revolution was taking place in Russia, and they had to focus on their internal matters. The February Revolution commenced after the women's protest, when the Tsar had to abdicate his throne. But and we can say the February Revolution was a spontaneous revolution, and the October Revolution or the Bolshevik Revolution, it went through a process for some time under the leadership of Vladimir Lenin, though he lived in exile. So Vladimir Lenin returned to Russia in October 1917, and that's when the Bolshevik Revolution took place, and it was a bloodless. It was a bloodless revolution. It did not involve any violence in October. After the Bolshevik Revolution, it was expected that Russia would establish new political, social, and economic institutions, but it failed to do so because of the civil war between the Red and the White Army. The civil war in Russia continued for 3 years, 1918 to 1921, between the Red and the White Army. The Red Army was the Bolsheviks' army, and the White Army was the Loyalists' army who were loyal to the Tsar, but eventually the Red Army won and the Bolshevik came to power. After Lenin's death, Joseph Stalin became the new leader of the Communist Party. Stalin is known as a very radical leader, and he was a dictator of Russia, and he launched a policy of industrialization in Russia, and that eventually led Russia to be very powerful. And in the Second World War, Russia under Stalin joined the Allied powers, Britain, France, and the United States. But later, by the end of the war, the Russia became a military might. It felt like a military might, and so we will see how mm, the relationship between the international relations between the Western Europe and America with Russia falls apart, and the Cold War emerges after the Second World War. Joseph Stalin was very focused to spread communism in Europe and other parts of the world, whereas the United States, through its Truman doctrine and Marshall Plan, they wanted to help the Western Europe, and contain communism, and that is, they wanted to spread capitalism and contain communism. So then another sort of war started, a proxy war that is known as the Cold War, which is the war will take place in a country, but Russia and the United States would not get directly involved. For example, it was the case of Vietnam, the Vietnam War. Anyway, Stalin died in 1953. So this image shows a typical sketch how after the Second World War, the American is striving to become powerful, and whereas Stalin is striving to become powerful. So with their respective ideology, America with its capitalism and Stalin with communism. So during the Cold War, there was this conflict, indirect conflict between the United States and Russia, and so Russia managed to spread communism in Eastern Europe. So Poland, Warsaw became a communist country. So this building is a reminder of communism in Poland. I went to Poland, I went to Warsaw in Poland for a conference in 2004, and I was very impressed with this building, and I was appreciating this building, the Palace of Culture um, and Science in Warsaw. So I just discussed it with my Polish colleague, and she was saying they are not very proud of this building because it's a painful reminder of communism in Poland. So at that time, in 2004, Poland was witnessing transition from communism to capitalism. So the Polish people in general were happy that they were transitioning to capitalism. Finally, I end my lecture with this image that I have taken with my students. My student is taking a selfie, and so we are very happy. We were celebrating the International Women's Day at the Brack University where I teach. It is in Dhaka, Bangladesh. So the International Women's Day commenced from the February Revolution and from the Women's March in Russia in 1917, but according to English calendar, it is now 8th March, and so there we celebrate the International Women's Day and remember the Russian Revolution. Thank you.